I've brought my aileron back over to one of my workbenches. I had it on the wing. I had it all set and aligned, and I had it clamped, and I went ahead and I marked my first hole closest to the aileron. And you can see, hopefully, here's my mark, and it is pretty much dead center between the end, this edge of the hinge and where these slots are. So basically the dimension between here and here, that mark is pretty much dead center. So I'm very happy with that. That's exactly how it worked out on my other wing. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and drill this, and then I'll take the flap back over to the wing, and I'll fit it under the skin. But then, since the filler panel is already drilled, I'll go ahead and drive a cleco directly through the skin, the hinge, and the filler panel. Recheck the alignment on the wing, and then I'll just start working my way down. Here is the location that I had just drilled my hole through the hinge. Now again, the hinge is underneath the skin. It's not underneath the filler panel, which is where it will be mounted. I have it just under the skin, and I'm using the skin holes to match drill directly to the hinge. So again, the aileron is in place. I've got it up against my spacer. I've got it clamped down there at that end, and I put my cleco in. The cleco obviously goes through the skin, through the hinge, and through the pre-drilled hole in the filler panel. So now with that in place, I actually use my blue pole here. This is a piece of aluminum tube. It's square aluminum tube. It's about 5 feet in length. Of course you can't see because the tape's in the way. It's 1/8 inch wall thickness. It's 1 inch square aluminum, and I use this as my reference. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. So if I put this on the edge of the aileron, then I can move the flap as I need to get its edge to line with this straight edge. So you don't want any gaps between the flap and this metal bar. And then of course you don't want any gaps between the aileron and this metal bar. So that's how I do it. So now that this corner is pinned, I could move that corner in and out in this direction, if that doesn't make you motion sickness, give you motion sickness. I can move that end of the flap fore and aft to get the trailing edge in line with the trailing edge of the aileron using this piece of aluminum square tubing to get it correct. So I've already done that, and I now have this end where it needs to be for this alignment to be correct. I have it clamped in place, and this probably won't really show up very well, but the hinge location is identical to the hinge location here. Again, that's just another check. If you look in this opening here where the skin ends, the hinge that's underneath here is basically flush with the edge of the skin, right in here, right in here. The hinge and the skin in these areas are pretty much flush. And it just so happened when I put my aluminum bar across my aileron and brought it out down into the flap area and got the flap adjusted so this is in a nice straight line, this end of the hinge ended up pretty much the same way. The edge of the aileron, or the edge of the hinge, is pretty much flush with the edge of the skin. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to go, since I have my clamp here covering this hole, I'm going to go ahead and drill this hole. I'm going to mark it, and then I'll take the flap out. I actually remove the hinge pin, remove the hinge, put that mark on the drill press, drill it. I'll put everything back together, come back, put the flap back on, cleco that one, and then cleco this one, recheck it. If it's fine, at that point I can go ahead and start drilling all of these holes, because this end will be affixed, that end will be affixed. I'm using the pre-drilled holes in the skin as my drill jig, for lack of a better term, so I can go ahead and mark all of these. Again, take it out. I'll probably remove the hinge pin, take this half of the hinge off, and then I'll drill all of these holes in the hinge on the drill press. So far it's working out really, really simple. I think this is a really good way to do it. Okay, so I've got my cleco in place here on the aileron end of the flap. And I went ahead and drilled this hole through the hinge on the drill press, brought it back, got it in place, and I used my straight edge, my blue pole here, and laid it across the trailing edge of the aileron and brought it across the aileron, or the edge of the flap, and everything is in really, really good alignment. There's no gaps. There's no spaces. Things are nice and true and in alignment. And when I look at the hinge, when I look at the alignment, if you will, from the hinge here to the skin, all the way along this edge, it's pretty much uniform. This here seems to be maybe just a skosh under the skin, and this one here seems to maybe stick out from under the skin a little bit, but it's no more than a 1/16 along this difference, 1/16 of an inch difference from that corner of the hinge to this corner of the hinge. What's more important is the fact that this line here is right on the money, in my opinion. That's what's most important. The way that these skins are stamped, actually, if you look at the edge, remember that this skin has not been messed with. This has not been cleaned up, deburred, or anything like that. When you actually look at this edge of the skin, when you look at it real close, you can see where it was cut. And it was cut not in segments, but instead of using one continuous blade, they must have used blades that are segmented, because it's almost like stepped. So there's like an edge, this edge is like here, and then it kind of steps down, and then there's another cut, and then another cut, and it kind of keeps stepping. So it almost makes sense that there'd be no gap there, and there is a little bit of a gap here, because of the way that the skin seems to be cut. Doesn't matter. What's important is this edge is correct. So I'm very, very happy with the way this came out, and now since I've got it pinned at each end, I'm going to go ahead and mark all of these holes. I'm going to pull the flap out, I'm going to pull this half of the hinge off, and I'm going to drill all these in the drill press, put it back together, bring it back. When I bring it back, I'm going to put it in the way it's supposed to be. I'll put the hinge underneath the filler panel, because that's where it's supposed to mount. And then I'll cleco it all. I'll probably do a quick match drill between all three components, the skin, the hinge, and the filler plate. Cleco it all in, pull my wood out, check my gap there, both on this side and from the other side, and check for freedom of movement. Here is the finished flap. So I went ahead and put it back together, put the hinge back on it, the half of the hinge, put the hinge pin in, brought it back over, put it in place, and went ahead and finished marking all of these holes. And then I took the hinge half off, put it on the drill press, drilled it. Well, here, let me back up a minute. So I had, if I remember correctly, I had this one in, this cleco in, and that cleco down there in. I came back with my drill with a number 30 drill bit and just came through all of these and just made a mark onto the hinge. And then I took the flap off, pulled this half of the hinge off, and took it over to the drill press. And then I used a number 40 bit, a small one, just to make sure that it would find the center of the little indication that I had made. And I drilled all of them, and then I stepped it to the number 30 and drilled them all again. Then I put the hinge back on the flap, brought the flap back over, clecoed that end, clecoed this end to hold it in place, and then I clecoed every single hole just to make sure that they all went in, which they did. Then I came back and removed every other one. And then, let me back up again. When I put the flap in this final time, I put the hinge underneath the filler strip where it's supposed to be. So now this is in like it needs to be. It's no longer between the filler and the skin. The hinge is underneath the filler. Then I clecoed everything. Then I came back and removed every other cleco, match drilled those holes, which were fine, and then moved the clecos, and I just match drilled all of those. So now everything is drilled and in place. You can see I've removed my spacer. You can see the gap here looks nice and uniform, and it's like that from the other side too. And you'll see here that there is no binding, no weird noises. So that's good. That's what we want. One thing I do want to point out is this screw, this bolt head here, it cannot get any closer to the skin when I move this flap. And that bracket, I'm trying to do this one-handed without dropping the flap, that bracket right there, it just barely clears that bracket and the skin. So again, I don't want to mess with the aileron, it's intact. But you may notice I've got a washer underneath this head. Washers do not need to be underneath the head of a bolt. But when I do things like rigging, I always add an extra washer. Not always, but most of the time I'll add an extra washer under the head of the bolt just for a case like this. So now what I can do is I can remove that washer, and that will sink this head in a little bit and give me more clearance here. If I can get away with just taking the washer out and running the nut on here without the nut bottoming out on the bolt before it clinches, I'll do that. But if that doesn't happen, if I need to have this washer to make sure that the bolt and the nut clinch, I'll just add it to this side. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and take this apart, take that washer out, put it back together, make sure that clearance is better. Other than that, this is done. You can't permanently assemble any of this because I still have work to do inside. I still have to run the other main push-pull tube, and then of course I got wiring to do. So the skins are not going to go on, so I can't rivet anything along here. But it is finished, and I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. Not really sure what I'm going to move on to next. I'll probably do that push-pull tube, but we'll see. Let me get this bolt out and back in, and I got some cleaning up to do. I got metal shavings everywhere inside the flap, so I'll be right back. I'm going to show you a little trick that I use quite often when I need to remove a bolt that's got a bunch of washers and spacers and stuff in between a bunch of brackets and stuff like that. So I want to pull this bolt out, but of course I don't want to I don't want to drop my spacer and washers in between all these components and then have to fiddle with getting them back in there. So what I do is I just chase one bolt with another bolt. So let's see if I can get around here without moving the camera. So I'm going to pull this bolt out, and as I do, I'm going to chase it with this other bolt. So this bolt will replace this bolt as I pull it out, and hopefully none of the components will drop. I'm bumping the camera, but there. So now this bolt is removed, and this bolt is now keeping everything in alignment. So I'm going to pull this washer off like I just talked about. So now the washer under the head is removed, and I can just do this in reverse. And that's that. It's a pretty simple technique to save yourself from having to redo these spacers in these tight areas, which is no fun. All right.